So typically when old women and old men are approached to consider writing a memoir, the answer very often is, who cares? Who would care about my life? It wasn't really a very interesting life. It was an ordinary life. There are two answers to the question of who cares. The first one has to do with all the questions that we never thought to ask our parents or our grandparents until they were already gone. All the stories we never got to know because we never asked. What was it like to be you as a kid, as a teenager? What were your dreams? What was daily life like? What were the important moments in your life? The absence of all those answers leaves a painful void in our knowledge of the people we loved and who raised us. The stories you will hear this morning are each writer's attempt to answer many of those still unasked questions, to fill out the history of who they are, what has mattered to them, and how they became themselves. In the final analysis, after all, what is it we leave behind? Not the objects that we've accumulated during our lifetimes, not the money, but the lives that we have lived. There is no greater gift that we have for those who come after us than the truth about what it has been to be us. The second answer is that the experience of telling our stories to the people with whom we are sharing these years of our lives allows us to be seen and known. And there is no greater yearning all of us have than to be more fully seen and known. I teach the memoir class by encouraging each writer to honor their lives by finding the best, the truest, and the most skillful language they can to record what it has been to be them. And you will have the pleasure this morning of hearing some of those stories. We begin with John Driscoll, who remembers an early experience of being first lost, then found. John?
Thank you, Sandra. Well, her name is Sandra Butler, in case you'd like to know, and we are most privileged to have her be our tutor and our editor and our supporter, I think, in all that we do. So you're going to hear some stories today that are reflective of the childhoods that we used to live and maybe some of the adult lives that we lived. And this one I'm going to tell you is entitled Lost at Night. It was 1953. I was a freshman at Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, and had proudly just earned my private pilot's license, completing a lifelong dream of learning how to fly an airplane. As a college student on a limited income, I was always trying to gather up enough loose change to head out to the airport and rent one of Human Aviation's airplanes for 30 minutes of fun-filled solo flying. And then, one day, when Bob, a well-heeled dorm mate of mine, came to me, he asked would I fly him home to Tulsa for the weekend, saying that he would cover all expenses. I jumped at the opportunity. Well, the long-anticipated December day of our trip finally arrived, and the two of us got off to a pretty good early start in Schumann's newly acquired Cessna 170. It was a beautiful morning, with bright fall-like crisp air and unlimited visibility, making for a wonderful flight, and the plane handled like a charm. On arrival in Tulsa, we were met at the airport by Bob's parents, who were delightful people. Rather than allowing me to immediately return to Enid, they insisted that I come to their home for a visit and an evening meal, an invitation I could not turn down. A meal, I mean. Doing so, however, would require me to return home at night, which was an enticing consideration since I had just been checked out for night flying, and I was anxious to make my first night solo cross-country flight. My day with Bob's family was an enjoyable experience. However, being winter evening was fast approaching. And by the time I said goodbye to Bob at the airport, night had fallen. Wasting no time, I completed my pre-flight inspection of the plane, taxied to the active runway, and departed the field as fast as I could. Then, once airborne, I was suddenly amazed by the beauty of the night and the lights emerging from the city of Tulsa down below me. Not having flown a lot at night, it was a treat to behold as a beautiful star-filled evening it was. In fact, I soon discovered as I turned the plane toward Enid, another extraordinary sight. On the ground below me, the highways appeared as long strings of red and white lights, with small towns twinkling in the night on the horizon. They appeared as little gems scattered across the blackened horizon in front of me. Well, suddenly, I realized I had been so mesmerized by what I was seeing below that I failed to pay attention to my compass, to my map, or to my route of flight. I totally ignored looking for the checkpoints I had circled on my map the night before. Where are those checkpoints? Where had they gone? Nothing seemed to be where it was supposed to be. The beauty of the night suddenly vanished as I came to the realization I was lost. Well, I could not resolve what I was seeing on the ground ahead of me with what was on the map. I was completely disoriented. I was also concerned about the additional time I was having to spend in the air and the amount of fuel I had remaining on board. I needed to find my way back to Enid, and soon. Searching the horizon, I discovered a good-sized town ahead of me with a flashing airport beacon. I had no idea what town it might be, but I remembered from earlier flights how some cities with water towers had their names printed on the side of the tower. Well, I had no sooner thought of this when, in the distance, I saw a red blinking light on top of what looked like a water tower. So as I approached, I lowered the plane to circle it. I then saw to my disappointment the town had not painted their name on this water tower. Now, what do I do? Remembering the airport beacon I'd seen on approach, I turned the nose of the Cessna toward it. Drawing near, I discovered the field, but it was in total darkness. There were no runway lights, and without a lighted runway, I knew I'd have a difficult time putting the plane safely on the ground. Nevertheless, I lowered the plane to a couple of 100 feet, turned on my landing lights, and I began crisscrossing the airport, back and forth, back and forth. Then while crossing the field for a second time, I saw a runway come into view. I immediately made a turn to the left to find its approach in for landing, and unfortunately, I couldn't even find the runway, let alone the approach into the runway. So again, in total darkness, I made another pass at the field. This time, right in front of me was a runway I was approaching at a 90-degree angle. Crossing it, I immediately initiated a 270-degree turn, and then as I rolled out of the turn, thank goodness, there it was, a beautiful runway right in front of me, captured by my landing lights. Now I was able to make a nighttime approach and a landing, and thank goodness I was finally safely on the ground. After taxiing to the dark parking ramp, I shut down the engine. As I hopped to the ground, I saw it. There it was. It was the name of the town. It was boldly painted on the entrance to the admin building that said, "Welcome to Perry Municipal Airport." What a wonderful sight to see. If it hadn't been there, my alternative would have been to walk across the highway to the local cafe and ask the waitress, "What town am I in?" Fortunately, I did not have to do it. So returning to the plane and my map, I soon located Perry, Oklahoma. Now I knew where I was, and I drew a straight line with a compass heading towards Enid. This time, I had no problem concentrating on my navigation, and I soon saw the lights of Enid ahead of me. Boy, was it going to be good to be back home again. After parking the plane and entering the flight office, I told my instructor what a wonderful and exciting experience I had had, making my first night solo cross-country flight, but never did I divulge to him my problems and how I had more than likely violated every rule in the book trying to put his plane safely on the ground again at a totally blacked out airport, just to discover where in the hell was I? Well, later that evening, back at the dorm, I began thinking about the night's adventure and how I could have killed myself. I then realized that some of life's most meaningful learning experiences come as a result of learning from our own mistakes. Well, fortunately that night, I'd been lucky enough to live and learn and to fly once again. Thank you very much. I can't say I'm glad to be here to tell you this story. Now it's my pleasure to introduce to you Gail Finnemore, and Gail's going to talk about how she found a job. Finding a job, Gail. Come ahead.
The time has come to find a job. Upon achieving certification in the 2-year executive secretarial program at Catherine Gibbs School, I'm given a list of companies looking to hire. My first interview is with Pendleton Woolen Mills, New York's office at 39th Street and 5th Avenue. Wanting to make a good first impression, I wear a tailored navy blue linen dress, nylon stockings, and navy 3-inch high heels and white gloves. This summer day, I choose not to wear a hat. Close to Grand Central Station, I enter the old, dark, gray building and take the small, dingy elevator to the 6th floor. A hallway leads me to a door with the company's name in bold black letters. Turning the knob, I push the door open to smell stale cigar smoke and see 2 large desks at one side of the small office space. The double window behind the desks looks out to another old, dark, gray office building, only an alley width away. Each desk has a telephone, barely visible under the messy disarray of typewritten letters, assorted papers, handwritten notes piled up and strewn over the desktops. A woman blankly looks up from one of the desks as I enter the smoke-filled office and introduce myself saying, I'm here to interview for the secretarial position. Expressionless, she stands and states she's Mrs. Marsh. She's a slight, unremarkable-looking, middle-aged woman with mousy brown mixed with gray hair and no makeup. She wears a long, oversized maroon jacket sweater with 2 pockets bulging with crumpled up tissues in each. Mrs. Marsh turns and, with a cigarette between her long, unmanicured fingernails, points to the man seated at the other desk. That's my husband, Mr. Marsh. The man looks up, nods to me, and immediately looks back down at the papers in front of him. Mr. Marsh is a short, balding man with wild, bushy eyebrows, a pot belly, and showing suspenders over a wrinkled, yellowing white shirt. Underneath his gray mustache, he holds a cigar between his teeth. There's a 3rd desk opposite the other 2, which must be the secretary's desk. It's empty except for a telephone and a plastic-covered typewriter. A tall gray metal filing cabinet is against the wall behind it. Mrs. Marsh describes the job. Answer the telephone, type letters, file, and perform various other tasks she or Mr. Marsh require. She will call me in a few days after reviewing my resume. This is a Mr. and Mrs. operation with a gopher Girl Friday as the 3rd person in the depressing office space. I'm disappointed with this dismal prospect, and I'm hoping tomorrow's interview will be more promising. The following morning, my commute from Mount Vernon Station on the New York-New Haven train arrives in Grand Central at 8:17, giving me plenty of time to walk the 12 blocks to 717 Fifth Avenue, the location of my interview with Blair TV at 9 o'clock. As I approach the Corning Glass building on the corner of 57th and 5th, I'm struck by the inviting fountain spilling into the turquoise pool at the corner of the building. Adjacent to the pool is the Steuben Glass showroom and the entrance to the offices. I take the elevator to the 14th floor of the 26-story building, step out into a bright, shiny lobby with walls of glass, and proceed through the double doors. I'm greeted by a friendly receptionist at Blair TV who announces me through an intercom system, and I'm soon welcomed by Gloria Sestone, the office manager, with a broad smile and firm handshake. Gloria is an attractive, large, 5'10", impressive woman. She has dyed red, heavily sprayed bouffant-style hair. Her beautiful, creamy white facial skin has skillfully applied makeup that accentuates her blue eyes. It's obvious she's wearing a bosom-to-thigh tight girdle underneath her form-fitting dark green dress. I hear her thighs chafing as we walk to her office. People are already buzzing with activity as they interact in the start of their workday. I hear telephones ringing and typewriters clacking. In her office, Gloria and I sit across from one another at the 5 by 5 foot square mahogany table. Her desk is catty-cornered by the window. With growing enthusiasm, I listen as she explains the nature of the business. Blair TV represents 27 network-affiliated local stations throughout the country. It sells the station's commercial time to R.J. Reynolds, Lever Brothers, Procter & Gamble, and deals directly with their advertising agencies, the most prominent of which are J. Walter Thompson, Ogilvy Mather, and McCann Erickson. There are 10 account executives, and Blair is looking for someone to work with one of them as his assistant. Gloria and I have had a good rapport during the interview. When I expressed my keen interest in the position, she asked if I would like to meet the account executive I might be working with. In his office, I'm introduced to Buck Johnson, a tall, slim, blonde-headed young man. He wears a white shirt and a blue printed bow tie. His suit jacket is folded across the back of a chair in the corner next to his desk. We have a brief, friendly conversation as Gloria observes our comfortable interaction. At the close of the interview, Gloria and I walk to the elevator. She asks if I want to start on Monday. I have the job. I give her a big smile and a handshake. This has been a good day. I have what I hope will be an exciting job, working 9 to 5 at a starting salary of $4,700 a year. And now I'd like to introduce Barb Levy, who is going to tell us about memories of days gone by.
Good afternoon. Boy, things were sure different when I was a kid. Black telephones were attached to the wall and with limited cord length and circular dialing. Mommy and Daddy could listen in the receiver, but had to speak directly into the phone. My family had a party line and had to be so careful not, when picking up the receiver, not to interrupt the other party on our line. I liked to sit on the floor between the large console radio where I could hear music and the black heat register on the floor where I could also be warm and comfy. Typewriters had ribbons, rimmed keys, and carbon paper if you wanted a copy. But those were grown-up things. Back when I was really little, cars had running boards where we stepped on to enter the car. Our Packard had jumper seats in the back, and sometimes my daddy would put a board with a blanket across those seats so I could sleep on it. Gas was 10 cents a gallon. And when we pulled into the gas station, someone pumped our gas, cleaned our windows, and checked the oil. In the 60s, cars had rear fins and no running boards. Margarine came in a plastic bag and was white until I massaged the orange dot in the middle. I really liked to get it evenly distributed, watching that white turn yellow. I loved real butter better, but it was not very available and was a special treat. Vegetables came in cans and tasted terrible, with the exception of corn. We went to the butcher to buy meat, and although shellfish was available, other fish was hard to find in upstate New York unless it was smoked or treated with something. Fresh vegetables were available only in the summer and were especially appreciated. My mom was really good with fresh tomatoes. She cooked them somehow and they were kept sealed in jars. It was so much work, but I sure loved those super delicious special tomatoes. I'm in junior high now, and girls are wrapping their hair around giant rollers and sleeping on them. I didn't need to do that because my hair was already curly, and I hated it because it would never be long and pretty with big curls like other girls. Stockings were attached to garter belts and had dark seam going up the back of the leg, requiring attention to make certain the seam was straight. But as soon as I got the seam straight, I would get a run in that stocking and have to go search for another one to match the one I already had on my other leg. If I was going to be on an airplane, the necessary attire was stockings, gloves, and yes, even hats. My hat was a pretty feathery peach color and had straps under my chin to hold it on. When 1965 rolled around, my shoes had super pointed toes, making them extremely uncomfortable. Men had pennies in their loafers, but all other clothing was a variation of trousers, shirts, and ties of the day. But ties would change over the years. They kept going very wide and then super narrow and then back to wide again. Although our neighbors had a TV, black and white, there was no TV in our house till I was in high school. When electric typewriters were introduced, I was already out of college and amazed to see that carriage return go back without even pushing it. Touching a key to erase a mistyped letter, wow. Well, by the time there was a copy machine, and that eliminated the need for carbon paper. And then even more surprises when computers became available. No more need for typewriters at all. When I was out of college and at work, lists were formatted on IBM cards. Those were the size of business envelope and had punched holes in them, recording the names and addresses. They were kept in boxes and were filed alphabetically. If a shelf tilted at all and the boxes fell to the floor, we would have to stay late to pick them up and sort them. Well, faxing documents became an important necessity. In the late 70s, the fax machines sent documents across the university campus in seconds, clearly much faster than delivering them by walking from building to building. Telephones no longer had circular dials. They had push buttons. Some phones were attached to the wall and had very long cords. The Princess phones were sleek and smaller and came in colors. I always wanted a pink one, but my parents never bought me one. Then when cell phones originally appeared, they were as large as wall phones. I didn't want one, but when I was at work on the weekend or driving to Phoenix, no one could reach me, so my only option was the giant cell phone. Fortunately, those two underwent significant changes as Apple computers took over the cell phone business, and now those phones are actually computers. My world keeps changing, and I guess I'm going to change with it. And now I get to introduce Maureen Hutter, who's going to tell us about Take Me Out to the Ball Game.
Thank you, Barb, can I ask you to just stay for a minute?
Sure.
I'm going to be asking a favor of her, just a little bit of time. So my talk is Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and as some of you may know, I'm one of 9 children from an Irish Catholic family in Brooklyn, New York. During my childhood and adolescence, there were 4 important things in my life: my family, Our Lady of Angels Church and School, the sidewalks and streets of Brooklyn, and the Brooklyn Dodgers baseball team. Today, I'm going to invite you to travel back 70 years and 1 week and enter the world I grew up in on a very important day, October the 4th, 1955. We're going to join my younger brother. His formal name was Gerard, but in my family, no one was called by a formal name, and so we're going to be talking about him as Roddy. And Roddy is going to narrate the story for us, and he's going to take us to an amazing baseball game between the New York Yankees and the Brooklyn Dodgers. But I'm aware that you all have been sitting for a long time. So before we go to Yankee Stadium, I suggest that you all stand up or sit tall in your seat, and we're going to do a 7th inning stretch together. So please stand up. And Barb, if you will you lead us in Take Me Out to the Ball Game?
Are you ready? Take me out to the ball game. Take me out to the park. Buy me some peanuts and Cracker Jacks. I don't care if I never get back, for it's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. But it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Thank you, Barb. So now let's get back to my story. The story begins in my home in Brooklyn. And as I said, it's going to be told by my younger brother, Roddy. And it's going to be in the first person present tense. And as the story begins, Roddy's with my mom, and she's trying to figure out why he doesn't want to go to the game. She speaks first. Roddy, I don't understand. Why don't you want to go to the game? You love watching the Brooklyn Dodgers play. Roddy responds, I don't want to go. Dad and his friends are all Yankee fans. And the Yankees will win, they always win. And everyone will make fun of me and make fun of the Dodgers. Son, let's talk. My mom gives my baby sister Patty a bottle, and she looks me straight in the eye. You're only 11 years old, Roddy. You have a lot of life in front of you, but this moment may never come again. Your Brooklyn Dodgers are playing in the final game of the World Series. I know you're scared. I know you're scared that they're going to lose. But win or lose, you've got to be there. You got to support them. Be brave, Roddy. Take a chance. I don't know if my mom is right or not, but I'm going. Wow. These really are good seats. There's no one in front of me. I could see everything that's happening on the field. I can even read all the statistics on the Ballantine Beer scoreboard. We're right on top of the Yankee dugout. I can hear all the players on their team. I can even see them spit. Mickey Mantle is right there. I hate him. But he's my dad's favorite, so I pretend. Yankee Stadium is much bigger than Ebbets Field. Today's crowd, they're dressed in the Yankee navy blue and white, and they're roaring their enthusiasm. Everyone says I have guts to wear my Brooklyn cap and wear the Brooklyn colors, especially here in the Bronx. But then they laugh, so I guess it's okay. My dad, he keeps introducing me to his friends. He says, I am Brooklyn's biggest fan. And he asks his friends to name a Dodger player, and he says that I will know their current batting average and their lifetime batting average. His friends think this is really something, but every good fan knows that kind of stuff. Dad's friend, Mr. Klein, the man who owns this fancy box that we're all in, and the man who's wearing the baseball cap with the autograph of all the Yankees on it, he says I can have anything I want to eat. The concession guy, he comes by all the time. The grown-ups are mostly drinking beer, but I ask for a hot dog and a root beer. Then I have a pretzel, and just now, Cracker Jacks and another root beer. I look over, I check with my dad. You know, I want to be sure he's okay that I'm ordering this stuff, but he just smiles. I got to tell you, I am getting so excited. Johnny Padres is pitching for the Dodgers. And my favorite player ever, Roy Campanella, he's catching. And today's game is a shutout. So far, no one on the Yankees have scored a run. Only us Dodgers have scored. We've scored 2 runs. started in the third inning. Campanella, remember, he's my favorite. He got to second base on a double, and he got advanced to third when Ferrillo hit a ground out. And then my sister Maureen's favorite, Gil Hodges, he's a first baseman. He hit a single, and he drove in the first run. Next, in the sixth inning, with 2 runners on base, Maureen's Gil Hodges again, he hit a sacrifice fly to drive in another run. That put us ahead 2-0. The Yankees tried to fight back in the sixth. With 2 men on base and 1 out, Yogi Berra, their catcher, he sliced an outside pitch. It went down the left field foul line. It was a game-tying double for sure. When Sandy Amorose, our left fielder, came out of nowhere, he caught the ball on a fly. He threw it to Pee Wee Reese. Pee Wee Reese threw it to Hodges at first. He caught the man off the base. It was a double play. The threat was over. Whew. Now we're in the bottom half of the 9th inning. 2 out. If Padres can hold on, we'll win. It will be the first time that the Brooklyn Dodgers have ever won the World Series. Up to bat is Yankee left fielder Elston Howard. The crowd is completely silent. On the 7th pitch from Padres, Howard swings. He hits a grounder to Pee Wee Reese at shortstop. Reese throws it to Hodges at first. He tags the runner out. I am jumping up and down and screaming. I am screaming. Then I look around. Everybody in the box is just standing there, not a sound. But I don't care. We did it. We beat the Yankees. We are the champions. Then I remember my dad. I look over to check him out. I want to see how upset he is that the Yankees lost. Maybe he's upset, but instead of looking sad, he gives me a big smile. He puts his arm around me. Congratulations, Roddy. Your bums have won. For the first time ever, you won't have to say wait till next year, because this is next year. So thank you very much. My presentation was about baseball. Again, the focus is a lot on foul balls. Our next presenter, Jan Van Buren, is also going to talk about fouls, but her fouls are fouls of a different kind. Jan is going to present about foul trouble.
Thank you, Maureen. Hi, everybody. So my story takes place on the farm in Northeast Iowa where I grew up. Pounding hooves of 6 beef heifers flattened the grass as they ran toward the barnyard on a sultry mid-June day. Late afternoon temperatures were hot, and the heifers were seeking a sure source of water in the concrete tank near the pig house. The female red-winged blackbirds sat in their nests, built securely in box elder saplings near a dry run creek. The males were singing their lovely evening song, cockaree, 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 in an attempt to attract attention. As I walked slowly toward one of the nests to check out the number of eggs it contained, I saw and heard something floundering in the grass. A wing fluttered, a head bobbed, and then nothing. A female ring-necked pheasant lay motionless and did not move as I approached. She had died staying on the nest, protecting her 8 hatching little ones. I knew if I left them behind, they would starve or provide food for a hungry fox or raccoon. In an instant, I decided to save those hatchlings. We raised baby chicks, so my 12-year-old mind thought we could raise pheasants. I stuffed 2 eggs in each of my jeans pockets right here. I didn't bring eggs today. And carried the 4 that had little beaks peeking out. I put them down as I closed the gate between the pasture, between the pasture and the barnyard, retrieved them from the dusty ground, and hurried to the house. Mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner, and as I entered with my treasures, after quickly telling her we had to save them, she agreed to help. I've pondered in my later years how many mothers would have agreed to this plan. Now I appreciate even more her understanding of how important saving those birds was to me. We got a heating pad and placed it in the corner of the kitchen on the tan linoleum floor with red flecks. This is not working for me. Sorry. I should have. At Mother's suggestion, I got a heating pad and placed it in the corner of the kitchen. And then I got a shallow pan with warm water and gently laid it on the 4 unbroken eggs to help soften the shells. Then I carefully created larger holes, opening in the other 4 shells, but still left those for the baby's pheasants because they would need to strengthen themselves in order to survive. Within 90 minutes, 4 were out of their shells, covered with fluffy down, feathers, and enjoying the heating pad warmth. I asked Mom how we were going to keep them alive, and she suggested using baby chick feed. So off I ran to the brooder house and brought back a 1/4 of a cup of ration, which I spread on the heating pad. The next day, the baby chicks daintily pecked on bits of corn, supplying the protein they needed for growth and good feathering. Once the hatchlings were content, I took the 4 remaining eggs out of the warm water, placed them on the heating pad, and covered them. Patience was key, as sometimes it takes 24 hours for all the chicks to hatch. Before going to bed, I created an 18-inch high cardboard fence using boxes that we had so the chicks wouldn't wander away from their food and warmth. Early the next morning, I ran down the stairs and found the 4 chicks still alive and saw cracks in 2 of the eggs. Soon we had 6 pheasants. I watched them explore their pen and hoped they would live 8 or 10 weeks so I could set them free. We took away the heating pad and brought in a brooder light consisting of ruby red heat lamp with a cone-shaped metal covering that kept the heat from rising. We placed the light 15 inches above the floor. At the end of week 1, we lowered the temperature 5 degrees, and we continued this process for 4 weeks. And then, by then, of course, they didn't need the heating lamp. I found a quart-sized baby chick waterer, filled it out, and put it in the pen. One curious chick went to it and then very cautiously put its beak over the saucer-type rim and drank. The others followed suit. These busy little birds explored the pen and periodically went to warm themselves under the heat lamp. Cleaning the pen by putting down newspapers and bringing in fresh food twice each day was my daily task. When the pheasants were 4 weeks old, they began losing their downy feathers and plumage and started to become noticeable. They devoured more food, peeped louder, and let us know that they were guests in our kitchen. Soon it was time to bring chick grit for their gizzards and fresh lettuce leaves from the garden that I had torn into tiny pieces. Sorry about this. I really goofed. After 2 more weeks, some were attending to fly, and one landed on the cardboard top fence. It was time for a higher fence and another place for them to live. So I began thinking about new living quarters for them. During the next several weeks, Dad and I talked about different options, finally agreeing to build in the north house yard a 6-foot-high fence of tightly woven materials and then covering it with wire mesh on top. The fence we built was partially under a large elm tree, so they had shade, and then there was a small red shed attached to it where they could be put in at night. And they had a curfew before my bedtime. So I put the pheasants in their new environment when they were 8 weeks old. They adapted quickly and began pecking around the grass for insects. And these insects provided protein, vitamins, and minerals. The fledglings rapidly devoured seeds that were supplemented with a high corn and protein diet. Their flying skills improved as they tested their wings, sometimes bumping into the covering on top of the pen. Soon they began molting and losing their juvenile plumage. They lived a contented life for about 2 weeks. Then one day, a hungry female barn cat discovered the pheasants and thought they would make a tasty treat. Fortunately, the fence held as they shouted loud, throaty, low-pitched voices. And the cat finally went away, but I had to keep chasing that cat for about 2 weeks until she decided that she wouldn't do this anymore. I finally won. After Dad and Grandpa had trimmed a tree, I took some of the smaller branches and sunk them into the ground so they could learn how to fly. And soon their resting instinct took over, and they flew up on the branches, adaptly keeping their balance. As a few weeks passed, the 2 of the males began to get their wattles and their heads turned green. The females' feathers were mottled brown. Soon it was time to turn them loose and let them fend for themselves in the wild. Dad and I considered several appropriate places to turn them loose. One was where I had discovered them, and another one was a 40-acre field that we had about a half a mile south of our farmstead. And this had the required pieces of protection. They had some trees, it had water, and it also had food. And they needed to be protected from foxes, bobcats, and raccoons. This 40-acre tract was very perfect, and it also contained rough grass and cattails and was surrounded by a cornfield. And this cornfield would be a source of food for them after harvest, as part of the stems and the stalks were remained, and there would always be some ears of corn available. So one Saturday morning in mid-August, I caught the pheasants while they were still in the red shed and resting. I put them in burlap bags and tied the top with twine. I loaded them in the back seat of the car, and Dad drove us to the field. We carried 3 bagged pheasants each, and we took them back away from the road near the stream. One by one, we set them free in the grass. I saw one nab a grasshopper and eat it whole. Another pecked at a seed-laden stem as they moved away, exploring their new environment. I watched them for several weeks as they adjusted to the wild. In fact, I went over every day and checked to be sure they were safe, and I didn't see any feathers or any other telltale signs that they might have been killed. They were flying free. I felt pride that we had raised them to survive on their own, but I missed hearing them cackling and watching them as they explored the ground for grasshoppers and insects. My hope was the males would not be shot by a pheasant hunter, and they would all survive harsh winters of Northeast Iowa, living to produce more pheasants. It is my pleasure now to introduce It is my pleasure now to introduce our own E.T., Ellen Thompson, whose story, Pennies from Heaven, relives some of the difficult financial times during the 1940s and 50s. There you are. I was trying to find you.
Hello, everyone. So, Pennies from Heaven. I try to title all of my memoirs with a song. My memoirs with a song. So this one, Pennies from Heaven. In 1943, everything was rationed. Butter, coffee, sugar, clothing, gas, even tires. Anything that could be used in the war effort was rationed, if not eliminated from general availability altogether. Americans were asked to save and recycle all metal items which might be useful. It was the first year that the penny was made of zinc-coated steel. Copper was a much-needed commodity. All of this was before my time. Because I'm so young. I only know about it because they taught it in my American history class, and I've heard stories from my parents and other older folks about how difficult things were here in the States during the war. Rationing stamps, bread delivery cards, war bonds, and victory gardens. All seemed like a romanticized story about a very dark time in our history. In 1954, I was going on 6 years old. I lived in Missouri on a very small farm with my grandparents. The town consisted of 200 people total. All God-fearing folks struggling to make ends meet. It was a time of wonder for me. I was too young to know about poverty or any of the other real problems that were going on in the world. My grandparents made sure they didn't burst that bubble for me. I did know that money was a hard thing to come by, and if you earned any, you would spend it wisely. It didn't take very long for me to get to know everybody in my immediate neighborhood. My grandmother took me on walks to the corner store about a half a mile away. And everyone who lived along the way became another friend for me. I would help carry the bag of staples back from the store, which endeared me to a lot of folks. The lady who lived right next door, Mrs. Hyatt, she was one of those people. She thought it was just so wonderful that I would help my grandmother as much as I did. I just thought it was the best I could do. One day, Mrs. Hyatt called me over and said, if I would walk to the spring, which was very near to the corner store, and bring her back 2 gallons of water, she preferred the water instead of the water from the pump in the backyard, she would pay me a dime. She was quite old, and I thought it would be the neighborly thing to do. The dime. My mind danced with anticipation of stuff I could buy with all that money. Yes, I'll be happy to do that for you, I said, beaming as I grabbed the 2 empty glass-gallon jugs. Off I went in my own reverie on my half-mile hike to the spring, 1 jug in each hand. Going was pretty easy. Filling the jugs was a snap. But carrying them back, that was quite another story. I started walking. I got about a half block away. I realized those jugs were pretty heavy when they were full. I stopped several times before I made it back to Mrs. Hyatt's place. That trip was going to be worth the dime I was going to get. So, this was really hard work. But I promised, and I was going to deliver. I rested in the shade, in the last bit of shade, just before I got to her house. I didn't want to look so tired when I got there. She looked delighted to see me and took one jug, brought it into the house, and then came back for the other one while I waited for the dime. She came to the door with a little black cloth change purse that snapped open and closed. She stood there, fingering the change, looking for the dime. Finally, she found it, and she held it out for me with a big smile on her face. "Thank you," she said. "I really appreciate dropping the steel penny in my hand." I looked at it, and I immediately understood it wasn't a dime. I instinctively knew she was as poor as we were, and I hoped that she didn't know it was a penny. "Thanks," I said. "Let me know whenever you need me to get more water for you." And now, sit back, relax. Where is she? There she is. Ann Dunlap is going to tell us about crow shenanigans.
We've had 3 stories today about flying, a plane, pheasants, and now a crow. It was Dad's idea to have a pet crow. A farm boy at heart, he climbed up a tall tree on our Uncle Fred's country property and carefully took the young crow from the nest, slowly making his way back down the tree as Richard, Jane, and I watched in awe. We all agreed that the tiny chick should have a pedigreed name, like our Swedish pointer, field-born Brit of Aveling Sasa. So we chose Airborne Jake the first. We fed Jake mashed up human food with an eyedropper and kept him in a padded shoebox. Before long, he thought we were his family. As he grew bigger and was ready to explore the backyard, we kept one wing clipped shorter so he couldn't fly. If he hopped down into the window well, he learned to climb out on a small stick ladder that Richard had built for him. Dad's hunting dog had been trained to flush birds from the brush and then fetch them when they were down in his mouth. Somehow, Britt knew that Jake was not fair game. In fact, they became best buddies. When the weather was cold, Jake went through the dog door into the garage to sleep in the kennel on the bedding with Britt. During the hot summer months, Britt stretched out on the grass in the backyard, and Jake hopped right up on top of him, opened his beak, spread his wings out to cool down. And if any of us left anything shiny, money, candy wrappers, keys, oops. He grabbed it and tucked it away under leaves and in Mom's flower gardens. Jane, who was then 4, had a shiny new prized possession, a silver ring that she had found in a Rice Krispies box. Jake recognized a prize when he saw one, stole the ring, hid it, and it was never seen again. One day out in her backyard, our beautiful next-door neighbor, Jane Felrath, heard someone say, "Hello, cow." "What? Who said that?" she asked. It was Jake. When my sister arrived home from elementary school, Jake met her at the white picket fence, lowering his head and making his gurgling sound, wanting some head scratches. If we were anywhere within reach, he insistently nudged our hands with his beak, trying to get his head and ears scratched. When we sunbathed, he joined us. Watching Jake when he talked was hilarious. He hunched down, spread his wings slightly, pumped his body up and down. Holy cow! As as if he had to push those words out of his beak. He could say, "Hello, holy cow," and then would laugh, sounding a bit like a cough. When the milkman opened the back gate, he was shocked when he saw Jake pounding on the back door with his beak, saying, "Hello, hello, hello, cow." Most of the time, Jake stayed outdoors, but occasionally we let him into the house. He came in when a photographer was there for a photo shoot to accompany a magazine article for General Motors where Dad worked. There were several staged photos. The first one of us sitting at our little playroom table with Britt drooling and Jake standing on the table, all of us pretending to be eating popcorn, except Jake was not pretending. The second was at the window over the sink in the kitchen. It was opened for the photo shoot, and Jake leaned down and turned on the faucet. He knew where the water came from. Every summer when we headed toward our summer cabin, Jake and Britt were packed into the car along with the rest of us. Britt bedded down on the front floor, and Jake in his cage in the back seat with the three of us. Once on the road, Jake was let out of his little cage and he'd hop up on the back of the right front seat. There were no headrests at that time, and he wobbled to stay steady. Imagine stopping at a traffic light, glancing at the car next to you, only to see a crow sitting, looking straight ahead with the rest of the family. There were lots of wide eyes pointing and gaping mouths. 4 hours later, arriving at the cabin, Jake was free to explore, no fences, and wander around chasing bugs, worms, and grasshoppers, whatever he could find. Each night he was put in his cage, covered with a cloth to keep him safe from outside critters. And one weekend, Richard couldn't find him to put him in his cage. Then, in the middle of the night, we all were awakened by a ruckus of squawking, yelling, and squealing from the brush by the outhouse. Dad ran in his pajamas through the thick blackberry brambles to see what was going on. A mink was latched onto Jake, and Dad shook it until it finally let go and dropped to the ground. We were all terrified. Dad was our hero. He had saved our Jakey. Richard presented him with a badge made out of a smashed root beer bottle top with yellow paper ribbons dangling from it. After that scared Jake hopped right into the cage at night, no coaxing needed. One of his favorite things was to jump into any available pan of water, flap his wings, and take a bath. Britt's water dish was his favorite spot. During the winter, we took him inside, let him splash around in the bathtub, then wrapped him in a towel. Then he walked around the house until he was dry. By the time we were all teenagers, Jake was 7 years old. He wasn't just a pet, he was a beloved member of our family. But as our lives became busier, we hadn't clipped one of his wings for a while. He was able to fly just a little bit, and he hopped up on the fence beside the neighbor's yard. When their dogs started barking, Jake must have assumed dogs are my friends, right? And he jumped down into their yard. He had taunted that dog from behind the fence for years. When we came home from school, Mom had to tell us that the next door dog had killed our Jakey. We were devastated. Richard was furious. "I hate that dog. I hate the neighbors too." He grabbed his air rifle and started to head next door to kill the evil dog. Mom calmed him down, saying, "It's not the dog's fault, Richard. Dogs chase things." He didn't know better. When Dad came home, he said that the dog was just doing what was natural for him. Through our tears, we had to accept that our little Jakey was gone. The yard felt empty without him, following us around, playing tug-of-war with our shoelaces, and tucking his head under our hands with his little gurgle purring sounds. The house felt wrong without his tapping on the window and the door. The silence was heavy, but final. Losing our precious pet crow was our first real taste of grief. We decided we needed to have a funeral service, and Jake was wrapped in a towel and placed in a special shoebox. The box was buried, complete with gravestone with his name, date of birth, and death on it. For the final entry in Richard's crow history log, he drew a picture of our now heavenly pet, Jake. All these years later, one lesson is clear. Calling someone a bird brain is not an insult, it's a compliment.
And thank you so much. I guess we've been taking you to the birds lately. But thank you for all being such an attentive and respectful audience. And we hope that you've enjoyed it. And if so, come back again next week, if there's room, or certainly next year to hear more stories from the days of our lives. Thanks, guys.